The grading tools and commands in Civil 3D provide a flexible interface that you can use to create almost any type of grading objects. You can automate surface creation by using grading criteria, such as grade to relative elevation, grade to distances, and so on, as well as feature lines. You can define grading styles and criteria and feature line styles in a drawing template to save time, drafting, and help create consistent, standard-based drawings. Before we go over grading objects, we need to understand sites. So, as far as sites go, a site is a collection of geometric objects such as feature lines, parcels, and grading objects that will all interact with each other. So if you look over here right now, I happen to have a couple of sites in my drawing, one called detention pond and one called pad. These sites do not contain any parcel objects, but they do contain feature lines that are used to either create a grading object or just simply to be used in a surface creation. These feature lines and grading objects will actually interact with each other and will allow surface creation to work much easier. Also note, you can right-click on any of these and zoom to whatever location you want to actually see that object. Feature lines are a crucial object type when doing any kind of site design or grading. If you look here, I'll go ahead and select a few of these, and I'll take these into the object viewer. And as you can see, these interact with each other and automatically will communicate your surface design. As far as the settings and styles for the feature lines, if you go to the Settings tab, General Category, we have Multi-Purpose Styles, and then you have all the feature line styles that you can define. Grading objects also live in the site, and if we look, we have something called grading groups that actually allow you to combine grading criteria to create whatever site design you need. If I select the grading object here, you'll see that it contains an infill, as well as some other gradings that grade right to the surface. Let's take these into the object viewer and see what they look like. As you can see, you can create some really cool grading objects based on just some simple geometry and some simple commands. One of the really cool aspects of grading objects is that they will interact together as well as allow for easy modification. So for instance, if I select this grading, and this is a surface grading, I can go to the Edit Grading option right here, and let's just go ahead and change the slope from a 2:1 to, let's say, a 4:1. And just like that, all the objects will interact with each other and automatically regenerate your grading. This makes grading object functionality very powerful. One of the other aspects of grading is the fact that a surface can be generated automatically. If we look at the Surfaces category, I already happen to have the surface created, but I've simply turned the display off. So I'll right-click on the pad surface, go to Surface Properties, and set this to a style that displays contours. And you'll notice that the contours and the surface itself will update automatically. Again, what's combined in this one surface is not only the grading objects, but also the feature lines as well. You can also generate automatic volume, cut and fill calculations, which makes using grading objects very powerful and easy. Grading objects also have settings and styles. If you look at the Settings tab, you'll note that there is a grading category where you can define the styles of how the grading objects will display. In most cases, these will not plot, but are simply there for visual purposes so that you can make edits to them as you need to. And the grading criteria sets are also available to automate what kind of grading you want to do, like grade to distance, elevation, relative elevation, and surfaces. But you can create as many as you need to, based on your design. This concludes this video discussing an overview of grading. So in this example, let's go ahead and create a tourist parking lot. Before we do so, let's look a little more in detail about feature lines. So again, as we mentioned in the grading overview video, feature lines interact with each other. Let's create two feature lines to see what I mean by this. So to create feature lines, they are located in the Create Design panel of the Home tab. And you have all the different options to create feature lines from the drop-down. You can create a feature line from scratch, feature line from just regular AutoCAD objects. You can create one from the alignment, a line from corridor, and stepped offset. For now, we'll just go ahead and create a feature line. Notice how it needs to go in a site, as we discussed in the grading overview video. You can even give them a name if you want to, but for now, we'll just leave this off. You give it a style so it looks a certain way, and then the layer that it must go on. We'll click OK, and I'm going to put this feature line at elevation 100. So let's go ahead and just place this anywhere in space. And notice how I have the option to specify elevation or drape this point to a surface, which is really cool. So we'll just type in 100, enter, and now that point is at 100. You can now specify a next point or draw an arc if you want to. So we'll just go ahead and just draw another line here. And we'll put this one also at 100. But notice the options available. I can set the grade between these 2 points, the slope between these 2 points, an elevation difference, again, snap that point to the surface, and a transition as well. So I can say go from one elevation to another elevation. And you'll transition that line to that elevation. So we'll just type in 100 and go with that. Now I'm going to draw a simple rectangle. And we'll put this right across our feature line so we can view this functionality. Now, if you look at my 3D view, this feature line is at 100. This rectangle is at 0. Let's see what happens when I make this now a feature line. I'll go to the feature line and create feature lines from objects. Select my object. Notice how I have a few other options available. First, I'll give this one a style if I wanted to. Layer, and then I can erase the existing entities and it'll just create one using this style. I can even assign elevations right off the bat, which is really cool. And if you have a 3D polyline with a lot of vertices, you can actually weed out those points in the 2D as well as the 3D. We'll just say erase existing and keep it at 0. Now watch what happens to this feature line when I do so. Notice how it automatically dropped that feature line down to 0. This is something you really need to be aware of, as it can cause your surface to be triangulated incorrectly. So again, because these two objects are in the same exact site, they are interacting with each other, and they will cause them to talk to each other. So if I take these into the object viewer, you'll again see that it is draping it down to that feature line's elevation. All right, so I don't need these feature lines anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete them. I'll just select them and delete them. So let's go ahead and design our parking lot. So the first thing I want to do is I have a start here, so you can follow along if you'd like to. And I'm going to create a feature line from scratch. Now, I do happen to have this figure. It's a survey figure that I want to actually come off of. So I have an existing elevation, which is the existing edge of pavement, and we're going to design this parking lot off of that. Now, because it's coming from the survey database, I cannot copy it, so I can't use it as a feature to actually edit and break apart and join, which is what we're going to have to do. So I'm just going to simply start the feature line command, just so I can snap to those different elevations on the figure. We'll click Create Feature Line. And in this case, we want to create a brand new site. So we'll call this one Tourist Parking Lot. Notice some of the options available as far as 3D geometry and numbering if you were doing parcels. But in this case, you would more be concerned with this one. And we'll click OK. And then I'll go with the basic feature line and then click OK here. And now I'm prompted to specify a start point. So I'll go ahead and snap there. And we'll go with the existing elevation. So I'm just going to press Enter here. And I can just keep going along here because I want to grab a few of the existing elevations. And again, I'll just pick elevation because as I snap, it will grab that 3D value. I'll just go across here just to get enough of a 3D feature line. And press Escape. Now I want to create a feature line that comes from the center of this point here. So I'll go to Feature Line, Create Feature Line. We'll go with the same exact options, but let's say in this case, we actually want to name this something. So we'll call this one Driveway CL for Centerline. All right. And you can also give it a different style if you want to see a different style and make it look a little different. Click OK. And I'll just go ahead and snap right here. Notice how it grabs the elevation. I'll press Enter. Now, as far as actually being perpendicular to this, we can just use regular AutoCAD O-snapping to simply acquire that point. As long as I have a perpendicular O-snap turned on, I can simply come perpendicularly to it, and then I can actually use dynamic input to type in a distance, and it will automatically generate that point for me at that same exact elevation. Now in this case, I actually want to change the grade into this driveway. So I'm going to just click on grade, or I could type G, and we want a grade of, let's say, -4%. So I'll type in -4, press Enter, and now there's my feature line. I'll press Escape to exit the command, because I'm done with my centerline road. Now what I want to do is I want to actually use the stepped offset tool. Now I could select this feature line and actually draft off of it using the tools that would appear in the contextual tab. But all these tools for feature lines are also available in the Modify tab as well. So if you look here, we have Edit Geometry, and here's the Stepped Offset tool, which is basically using the offset command, but I can actually do things like slope, difference, and so on from the object that I'm offsetting. So I'll go ahead and specify the offset distance of 12, press Enter. I want to pick this object, And I'll make sure I type in M for multiple, and then I'll pick the side that I want to go on. And in this case, we want a grade of, let's say, -2% to create our cross slope. And then we'll pick the other side as well. Because I've already entered -2, I can simply press enter, and now I've got the offset right there. I'll press escape to be done with it. Now let's say, just for the heck of it, I want to just use the polyline command. I don't feel like going through all the different typing ins and grade changes of using the feature line command. So I'm just going to start the regular old polyline command, and I'm going to snap over here, and I'm going to acquire this point and simply go perpendicular like this. And I'm going to use just dynamic input to go ahead and define my parking lot. All right, so let's say for this one here, we want this to be 100 feet. And then I'll acquire this point here. And again, I'll just simply go perpendicular like this. And we'll type, let's say, 150 feet. And again, I'll acquire this point, go this way. We'll do 150 feet. And I'll acquire this one, and I can grab the intersection of those 2 points. Now, I'm not going to close this. I'm going to actually snap to this point here. Yes, I know it's a 2D polyline, and we will change this eventually to the correct elevation. I'll press enter. Now I can also do a 3D polyline. So let's go ahead and draw a 3D polyline for in between here, because we're going to eventually need to create a break line so that we get some nice triangulation. So I'll type in 3P for 3D polyline. And in this case, I want to just snap to these points here, and it'll automatically grab the elevations. And there's our parking lot so far. Now let's go ahead and create feature lines from objects. So we'll go to the feature line, and then create feature lines from objects. And we'll go ahead and select this one here, and we'll press enter. And again, I could give it a name, but we'll just leave it as the default. And for this case, maybe we'll call this one grading daylight, because we're going to use this eventually to daylight out to the existing ground. We'll click OK. Now that's a feature line. Press enter again to repeat the last command, and we'll just pick this one here. And for this one, we will just pick a basic feature line style and click OK. Now I've got my parking lot kind of getting outlined really nicely here. So let's go ahead and break this feature line at these 2 points and still keep this one here so I can get the different break lines I will need to better triangulate the surface. So we'll go ahead, and this time let's go ahead and select the actual feature line. Notice how the contextual tab updates, and I can go in here and select these different options to turn on the edit geometry and edit elevation commands. And in this case, what we want to do is we want to break our feature line at the different points and keep the middle of this feature line. So we'll click on break, and we'll go ahead and select our feature line. And then there's an option for a first point. So I'll go ahead and just click on that, and I will snap at the same exact point. I happen to have 2 feature lines right now. All right, let's do the same thing for this side here. So we'll go ahead and, in this case, we'll just go to the Modify tab, and we'll go ahead and pick the Break Line tool there. And we'll pick our feature line, F for first point, then pick, and then pick. And now I should have 3 feature lines. All right, that way I can use this for better triangulation. If you want to, you can select these. I'll do a select similar, and I'll even select this one and bring this into the object viewer by simply right-clicking Object Viewer. All right, this way it kind of gives you a nice idea of what's going on. Now, we're not too dramatically changed in our slope, so it looks pretty flat, but it does contain some slope differences. This is one of the other reasons I like to keep a 3D view, is I can actually see my feature lines getting generated properly. Let's go ahead and look and make sure that this is at the correct elevations. I can select this feature line and go to the elevation editor, and this is a great little interface in the panorama to actually go in and change different slopes or elevations and so on. So if, let's say, I wanted to grade ahead here, I could go in here and select that point. Notice how it'll actually show you what point you're at. So the triangle over there is updated. And I can select this, and I can even say grade ahead by -2. Press enter. Notice how it'll update all those as well. Again, you can also make sure you change the elevation here. So I'm going to actually zoom in here, and just to make sure I'm on the right elevation, I'll select this one here, and I'll hover over this, and in the lower left corner it says 101.1833. So it looks like I'm at the correct elevation there. And that's going to be the same for the end station as well. If you mess up and you want to change these all, I'm going to select all these rows, and I can do a constant elevation or grade by simply clicking this one and click OK. It'll update all the rows with that same elevation. The grading elevation editor is really a pretty cool tool to use. Now what I want to do is I actually want to grade a slope between points, and my drainage is going to be down this way. So I want all the drainage to kind of go over here. So what we'll do is we will actually grade all the way down from, let's say, this point here down to there by -4%, and this point here, -4% as well. So I will go ahead and pick in the Modify tab. We'll go to the Edit Elevations panel, and here's a bunch of tools. We're not going to cover all these in this class, but as you can see, there's a whole mess of nice little tools to go ahead and change your elevations. We'll just pick this one here, which is Set Grade Slope Between Points. I'll pick my feature line. It's asking me where's the starting point that you want to define grade points. I'll pick here, and it's asking me, is that the elevation you want to begin at? I could change it right now or just press enter to say, yep, that's the elevation I want. Then it's allowing me to go all the way and define however many points I want to grade a slope between these points. So this is a really powerful tool. I'll select all those, and I'll say I want a grade of, like I said, -4%. Press enter, and notice how it goes all the way there. Now, as we notice there, that looks a little too steep. So let's go ahead and change that. So what I can do is there's a cool little tool called the Quick Elevation Edit. I'll go ahead and select that. And if I look over here, this actually allows me to just pick that and say, you know what, let's make this actually -2. Press enter. Go over here, point this way, and say -2. Press enter. And just like that, I have made changes. I'll even hover over this one, click on that, and say -2 as well. Very simple, really cool tools. Depending on where you select, you can actually even change the elevation from this tool as well. Now that I've graded that, I need to actually join these all together. So I'm going to select one of these first, and I'll go ahead and pick the Join tool to join the different feature lines, because I'm going to use these eventually to grade to the surface. So I'll go ahead and select my other feature lines that I want to join. And again, this is why we actually broke this right here. So I'll go ahead and select this as my grading object, press enter, and notice how they're all now one entity. Now, of course, we wouldn't normally have square looking boxes, right? So let's go ahead and fillet these. So there's a nice little fillet tool right here. And notice how I can just simply cover over these, and it's automatically going to show me the fillet as based on the radius defined. So let's just type R, enter for the radius. And for this one here, let's do it 20. So I'll pick there for 20, pick there. And let's say for this one here, we want it to be a little bit larger, so we'll just say 40, and we'll pick there. And then this one, of course, if it has no solution, it'll tell you. So that one has no solution, so we'll do a radius of, let's say, 10 for this one. And then for these here, I want a radius of, let's say, 25. Again, if it can't solve it, it'll tell you, so I'll just do a radius of 15. Pick that. We'll change it again to, let's say, 15. There's that. You might have to move your mouse around just to get the radius you want. And there's that. And just like that, I now have updated that automatically. Again, really cool stuff. So let me press escape, but obviously now we have a problem. I need to actually go in here and select this feature line and then just reconnect it. So I'll go ahead and just pick this and snap to that. It'll automatically go to the correct elevation and pick that one and go to that. Now, when I go ahead and triangulate this, I know what's going to happen. It's only going to triangulate between these 2 points. Now, that's not a very tight triangulation. That won't give us a really good surface. So let's go ahead and go to the Insert Elevation Point. And what I can do for this one is I can actually define a distance that I want to do so, or an increment. I'll select increment and I'll say every 5 feet I want to add an elevation point. And just like that, I now have elevation points all the way across that object. I'll press escape a few times, select this one, and do the same exact thing. Let's make sure we snap to the right point. The elevation will update automatically. And again, what's really cool about having your 3D view here is that you can see what points might cause an issue, or if you've done anything that was incorrect. I'll do the same thing here. I'll select this, and then I'll go to Insert Elevation Points, and we'll say an increment of 5 feet, and there is our finished feature lines. I'll select a bunch here, right-click, select Similar. If I miss some, I'll pick another one here, and then we'll take it to the Object Viewer to view our finished feature lines. Again, there are many tools. If you need to raise or lower individual feature lines or a bunch of feature lines, there's a whole bunch of tools like raise and lower, or drape to a surface, or reference another feature line or elevation to define another feature line's elevation. This concludes this video discussing creating and editing feature lines. All grading objects will be defined by a set of grading criteria. Design grading criteria controls the geometry and behavior of your grading objects. In most designs, multiple grading objects with different criteria will be used to model your site. Grading criteria is set in the Settings tab, Grading category, and then we have Grading criteria sets. You can define multiple sets for different types of grading, for let's say doing pond design, or doing berm design, or as the ones are listed here, just some generic ones that allow you to do a lot of grading criteria. Before you can do any kind of grading, you need a grading group. However, when you start grading, you can create the grading group on the fly. I'm going to select one of my feature lines to start the grading process. Note that you can pick grading from right here, but let's just go ahead and do it this way. We'll select my feature line, and then in the Launchpad, we have the Grading Creation Tools. This launches the Grading Creation Tools, and in here, I need to tell Civil 3D exactly the group I want to model with, and the surface about which to daylight to if I choose a grade to surface grading criteria. So first, let's go ahead and pick this here to select the grading group. And what's very crucial is that you create or select a grading group within the site where your feature lines exist. If you do not do this, you will not be able to create any kind of grading objects from those feature lines. Again, they all interact with each other. So I have no groups yet, so let's just select the Create New Grading Group. And what we'll do, we'll just call this one Parking Lot. Right now, we do not want to turn on automatic surface creation because it'll just slow down the drawing a little bit. We'll turn this on when we're all said and done with our grading objects. Click OK. We now have our grading group. Click OK to dismiss the grading group dialog box. Now we need to select a surface about which that we want to daylight to. So we'll go ahead and set the target surface, and we want combined EG. Now let's just look at a couple of these here. Let's go ahead and do the grade to distance. We'll go ahead and from the drop down here, pick Create Grading, and then just follow the prompts in the command line window. First, we'll select our feature, pick your side that you want to grade to, then it says, do you want to apply the entire length? You can actually define transitions between gradings if you want to. For now, we'll go ahead and do the entire length. We'll type a distance in of 5 feet, and then we want to do a grade of, let's say, 6%. That creates our grading, and notice how it automatically goes around all the geometry. If, let's say, I decide I don't want that grading, Civil 3D provides very easy tools to delete your grading. So as you just hover your mouse over the grading, you will see it highlight in the drawing. Simply pick it, and it's deleted. Let's go ahead and grade to a surface. We'll pick the Create Grading tool, and then just following the prompts, it says select the feature, so I want to select my feature. Pick the side I want to grade to, say yes for the entire length, and then I want a slope of, we'll start with 4:1 when that feature goes in cut, and we'll do a slope of 4:1 when it goes in fill. And just like that, as you can see in the 3D view, we automatically have our grading. Holding the Shift and middle button, we can actually rotate the view in this 3D view to see the design. Let's say we decide that's just too much fill volume. We want to just change this to, let's say, 2:1. I'll go ahead and choose this drop down here and choose Edit Grading. I'll hover over the object, and then automatically it knows what was used to create that grading object. I'll simply press Enter for slope, and let's say we want to do a 2:1 in the cut, and then a 2:1 in the fill, and automatically our grading object will update. Pretty cool stuff. Now to complete this design here, we need to actually add in the feature lines. So what you can actually do is select your feature lines in the drawing. I'll just select these 3 that I have created. And in the contextual ribbon, I can add to surface as break line. Now right now, I do not have the surface just yet. So before we do that, let's go ahead and create that surface. So we'll go into the Parking Lot Grading Groups properties by right-clicking on here and go to Properties. And we'll toggle on the Automatic Surface Creation. Give it a style, give it a name, click OK. The tessellation is where you define how it tessellates, or the triangulation increments that should occur between curves. That's what this means here. If you want to do a volume base, we'll toggle that on as well to get automatic volume calculations. And then click OK, and now we have a surface from our grading objects. Again, you change anything about that grading object, the surface will update automatically. I have my feature lines already selected, and I can now add these to the actual grading surface. We'll click Add to Surfaces Break Lines, select our surface, press OK, and then we'll give it a description. We'll say Feature Lines. These are standard break lines, and note how you can actually add some supplemental factors to increase the triangulation between those objects. This will make your surface a little larger and slower to work with in the drawing, but it'll make your surface more accurate. I'll click OK here. And then just like that, I now have my surface updated. Let's go ahead and take it into the object viewer. Now, as you can see, it looks like it's almost there, but we're missing a few areas where it looks like there's a hole in the surface. What you have to do is create what's called an infill in these locations. So what I can do is I can actually zoom in here and select one of my grading objects here. And then in the contextual tab, I will click on the Create Grading Infill. And then I'll pick the areas. Notice how Civil 3D is automatically finding the areas that it must create the infill for. We now have an updated surface. Again, pretty cool stuff. If I wanted to change this surface's style to a style that would show some arrows for slope drainage, I can select the surface, go to the Properties palette, and as long as I have a style that does that in the drawing, I can select the triangles and slope arrows, which we created in an earlier video. You'll see that you can see some immediate feedback as to how this surface is draining. Pretty amazing stuff. You have your parking lot. This concludes this video discussing grading objects. Grading objects can automate volume calculations. One quick and easy way to see the cut and fill net volumes within this area, again this will be a clipping boundary of the actual grading object, is to go to the actual site where the grading group exists, right-click on that grading group and go to Properties. And very simply, in the Properties tab, you will see the cut and fill volume and the net volume as well. The way this works is in the Information tab, or when you first created the grading group and you turned on automatic surface creation, the volume-based surface is where the volume calculations are coming from. If you want to copy any of this out, simply right-click, copy all, and it's simply text, and you can paste it into any application you need to. One of the other methods to get volume calculations is to use the Grading Volumes tool. If I select one of the grading objects, I'll go to the Grading Volume tools in the Grading Contextual tab. This opens up this dialog box, and the first thing I need to do is set what grading group I want it to look at. Notice how it just gives you the default cut and fill and net volume. And then what's really cool about this functionality here is I can actually raise or lower this by distances that I define here to get the volume adjustments that I need. So if I just lower this by 1 foot, you can pick a selection set of just specific grading objects, or you can do the entire group. Now note, when you do this, this actually will readjust and you may get some undesired results. Okay? So what's happening is it's just lowering the grading groups and doing its best to actually recalculate based on that 1 foot lowering. So what you can also do though, and this is pretty powerful, but again, it can be very dangerous. You can automatically raise or lower to balance the volumes. So let's say in this case, I want to have a required volume of 8,000 cubic yards of fill, because let's say 10,000 was just too much based on our design specifications. If I click OK here, as I mentioned, it does its best guess to figure out and calculate these out. What it does is it actually lowers the grading groups. It does a pretty good job of trying to lower the feature lines, but that can give you some very undesired results. So if we look at our surface now, as you can see, the contours are pretty messed up because it's doing its best to calculate out that volume based on what you defined in there. Again, pretty cool functionality, but just be aware that you may get undesired results. This concludes this video discussing grading volumes.